Welcome to the Scaling Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Harper, and today we're diving into a story with one of my good friends, Brian Beers. He's a franchise entrepreneur who's done so many cool things that we're going to talk about today.
There's lots and lots of information out there about like franchising 101, right? How to buy a franchise and the 5 things to look out for, and like a lot of it to attract the very newbie person to it. But there was this huge void on how do you actually grow it, right? How do we build a business to be, 45 million a year, 100 million a year? I mean, there's guys with doing over $1 billion in franchising.
Brian has scaled from just a few locations to a massive empire of over 30 Midas shops that do over $40 million a year in revenue. Today, we're going to unpack Brian's blueprint for exponential franchise growth, mental frameworks that separate successful entrepreneurs from everyone else, how to transition from a hands-on operator to a strategic leader. If you've ever felt stuck or you want to build a great business, this episode is for you. So tune in. You're really going to enjoy my conversation with Brian Beers. Awesome, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. This is cool for me because I've been on your podcast a few times, and now I'm launching mine, and you're one of my first guests. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
For the audience that doesn't know, we've become good friends over the years, and a lot of Rolling Suds' success, especially early on, I attribute to you and the things that you've done to promote Rolling Suds. We wouldn't have found the franchisees that we have, a lot of them, without you. So super grateful for our friendship, and super grateful for your belief in Rolling Suds and us. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So for the audience that doesn't know you, I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this do, but give me kind of the background. You started in Midas, still are in Midas. How big was the business with your family when you took it over? Where is it at now? Kind of catch me up to speed on all of your kind of business adventures and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I joined the family business. It was my dad and uncle's 2010 after I graduated college. At that point, they'd been it for years. I had 6 locations, was doing maybe $5 million in revenue, and basically breaking even, like not really making any money. I mean, I remember going to some manager meetings early on, and they were talking about how they were putting payroll, like they were putting money in the business just to meet payroll. And, so I come in kind of as this like Hail Mary to try to get the business going again. If not, they were looking to sell. Already had spreadsheets kind of planned out of, income that they could make from some of the properties they still owned and whatnot. And so anyway, I come in and learn the business and breathe new life into it. And one of the best parts about being a franchisee is the community. And so I traveled around the country and got to meet other franchisees and try to figure out like what are the things that they were doing that I could learn and implement in our business. And I did that and got very involved. I was on the franchise advisory committees and all these things, and started to have success, started to make the business more profitable. And then in 2016, I was an employee, and I wasn't making a ton of money based on, in correlation to the results that I was producing. And the only way I could really make more money is if I owned the stores, right? And so I went out and bought 2 existing locations that were in our market in a new entity that I owned 50-50 with my brother. And so we still ran everything as one. Like I was still the president of everything, but equity splits were different. And then, all the money we basically made in that new entity with these 2 stores, we just reinvested back in the business and bought more in 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23. And as of today, we bought out my dad and uncle in the original 6 stores. I don't know, 4 years ago, probably by now. And so anyway, today that business, we did $44 million last year in revenue, and we have 33 locations. This year, our target's $55 million through a number of acquisitions that we're working on right now, and growing same stores. So, and then then we operate a number of other franchises. I'm an investor in a franchise, or we obviously help people get into franchises. And so I'm in it in every facet.
So you didn't have any business experience before getting into Midas, but you had worked in the shops. Is pretty much kind of what you see.
I had always worked as a kid. I had a bunch of small businesses. I worked in college as a software developer. I mean, I had a bunch of like side hustle stuff. But they're all more, computer-based things, not service-based like that.
Yeah. And at what point did you realize, like, oh, I could take this 2 and turn it to 30? Like, because, like, going from 2 to 30, like, talk to me about, like, kind of what that experience was like. Because that's, I mean, most entrepreneurs don't make that big of a jump, and especially in the time that you made it.
Yeah, and it took a while. I mean, it took a while, right? It's in the beginning stages that's the toughest because you have the 2. Like I'm working, 60 hours a week, like 7. We're only open 7, but I'm open 6. I'm working 7 because I'm really focused on trying to grow the business and learn all these different aspects and put together spreadsheets and tracking and plans and research and so like you think like there's so many hours in the day, like how could I possibly do more? My phone, I remember counting one day I had 100 phone calls I made or received in a day. And it was like, if we had double, like what's that, 200 phone calls? Like it's not possible, right?
Right.
And so, I knew that the only way that we could own more was if I had to build a team, right? I had to replace myself like out of that role. And, there are other large franchisees in the Midas system that, even at that time had, 100 locations. There's maybe one other group that had in the 50s. There was a couple in the 20s and 30s, right? So there was this path to it. Like there was this, like other people had done it. And so, that's like encouraging, right? When you see other people do something, it's possible, right? Versus like if no one in your world has done that, it seems totally impossible. So I knew it was there. It was just a question of how we would do it. And then, so for many years, all of like my family's original locations were all within, 15 minutes to the next, like daisy chained together. And, I had believed that our success was highly correlated to like our physical presence in the store, like my physical presence, my dad's, like whoever. And, then I had this like limiting belief that if we owned stores that were an hour and a half away and then I couldn't physically be there every day, that they wouldn't be as good, like I'm like competitive. I want to see my name at the top of the charts, and like, they wouldn't do as well, and it would hurt my reputation and my ego, and that, I didn't want to like, feel that, right? That I'm failing because I have these things and I can't be there. And so it took a while to get over that feeling, to come to the realization that, hey, like, I mean, honestly, a lot of it was during COVID, because like we had all my stores, even so I had 6 in the original 6, so we had 12 stores during COVID, and we kept moving along. Like every year we've grown every single year for a decade, and a lot of times like I wasn't physically going to the stores, right? We switched to this more remote. We're on Slack, we're we got webcams, everybody. And so then we switched it from like me being physically in the stores to drive it to like, wow, I can actually like grow this, and we can still like create culture, and we can still like have success without me physically being there. And then that's what unlocked, that says like, yeah, if this works here, like we can then, that opened the door to like, let's get into a new market that was an hour and a half away, which was New Jersey. And then once we figured that out, then it, adding another one that's another hour and a half away was like nothing changed in our lives. And so it's kind of like, how do you eat an elephant? They say it's like one bite at a time, where, the goal isn't to say, hey, I can't fathom going from 2 to 30, but it's like, I can fathom, how do I go to 2 to 4? And then once I'm at 4, can I go to 8? And then when I'm at 8, can I go to 16? And then when I'm at 16, now I see the light to 30s. So I like to think of it in doubles, and that's what I've seen many other successful, very large franchisees do. It's a similar process of like you work, and then you hit this wall, and like things break at the wall. And so you either stay there, right? Because you're like, all right, well, this is how it is. Like this is what my life is. This is what our team is. Or like you bust it open, right? You break down the wall, and you totally rebuild your systems. You rebuild your leadership team. You rebuild how you think, how you act, the way you approach things. And that new version now has the capacity, has the strength to then double again. And then same thing, hit the wall, boom. What are you going to do? Stay there, break it down, continue to grow. And so that's what I've like felt as we've grown. And in the wall, like today, I mean, I have we'll get into this, but like I have a CEO of that business now. Like I fired myself. And so like Now the new wall of that is like however big he wants to build it. So we have the best leadership team we've ever had, and I mean, there's a realistic chance we could get that business to 100 million from 50.
Wow.
In just a few years by, now that we have this strength that years ago we did not have.
Right.
So.
And what has had to change in you during that time, right? Because, like, at least in my experience as an entrepreneur, like, we hit these walls and basically I need to become a different leader. I need to become a different CEO. And, with Rolling Suds, like, we've done that, like, really quickly. And we've gone from, 0 to 5 million in 9 months. We've gone from 5 to 10 million in another 12 months. Like, and so these growth things, like, are limited basically by my ability to grow and to step out of the way and to hire and train. So in the last, kind of decade, as you've scaled this business, like, what has changed in you, whether it's in your leadership style or frameworks that you kind of live by? Like, what has had to change for you to make this happen?
Yeah, I mean, many times, and 100%, you, the owner, the business, is the biggest bottleneck in the business. Like, there's no bigger bottleneck. Even for me, like, what holds us get back to 100 million is still me. Like,
right.
It's not anything else. And so to start, I mean, I talk about how you, like, there's these 3 phases that you go through. And at the beginning of every business, it's I do it. So it's like, I do it myself. You do everything. Right. And so even when, like, I was running the stores, like, I was physically running the stores. I was hiring every person. I was hands-on training every person. Like, in some ways, like, that created a really strong foundation because, I personally could impact every single one. And when you're small, like, every person matters, right? If you have a team of 4, like, 25% of your staff is one person. You make a bad hire, like, that chair is going to fall to the ground. And so,
right.
But you have to be good at that. Like, you have to master that phase of your ability to identify talent, to get them to see your vision, to, like, train them, to communicate with them, to, like really make them see, like, what you want to do.
Right.
And you have to master it. Then it moves into the phase that I call the we do it. So now it's like, I showed you how to do it, but now we are going to do it together. Like, like, instead of me answering the phones, like, you're going to answer the phones, and I'm going to, like, I'm going to let you fail. That's the hardest part of that phase.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, like, you're just, like, cringing, listening to them, how they, like, are talking to the customer, or how they, like fumbled the ball or whatever it is. You just want to, like, step in and fix it. But, like, a lot of times they don't learn from that. So a lot of times it's like, all right, like, let me just let them fail, and I'll maybe just cringe here for a second. And then, like, let's talk about it. Hey, what went well? What could have been better? Here's what I would have done. Like, pick up the phone, call them back, and, like, let's run through it. And so, like, that requires a ton of patience, a ton of discipline. And I think for a lot of people, that phase is where many people get stuck because they just can't let go. Especially when it's your business that you built from zero and it's like your baby. Right. And you got a lot on the line. To let people, like, fumble the ball feels like what the hell am I doing, right? But it is the only way that they are going to grow, and the only way that you get better as a leader, to be able to communicate, to train, to, like, do the things that actually build a business that runs without you. And then it's the they do it phase. So now we go from I to we to they, and now you have this self-managing team, the team that somebody comes in, the job's handled, sold, produced, completed, paid, end to end, and you personally have, like, nothing to do with it. Like, once you can figure that out at a store level, at a district level, like, for me, eventually it could be a region level, like, it's infinitely scalable, right?
Right.
So then at that phase, it's really leading through other people and being able to identify, like, to know who you need to hire for that leadership position, and then train them, set expectations, not micromanage. Even for a lot of times for me, like, there's things that like, something will come up and my tendency would just be to handle it or to do it or to tell somebody how to do it, versus, like, once you have a leader in this position, like, he doesn't want to be micromanaged. He doesn't want to be told what to do. And it's like, if I constantly would not even undermine intentionally, but, like, tell him what to do, it's like, all right, man, like, let me do my job, And so so you have to be able to, like, I need to personally be able to just say, all right, he's got this. Like, I need to trust that he's got this. And, the stakes just get higher and higher, right? Because now it's, my CEO hiring district managers who then hire store managers who, like, right, at every level we get, if I don't have a good leadership positions, CEO, CFO, whoever it is, like the ripple effects could be disastrous. And so, you really have to have a good gut, a feeling of like who you're hiring, belief in them, belief in their core values of who they are as a person, and seeing it. I think that's like I think that's like the biggest change. I mean, there's a ton of others we can get into around self-doubt and money stuff, but I'll stop there.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally relate to that. I mean, for me, my background is in sales and franchise sales, and in my mind, there's no one better at it than I am, and and so I'm doing that. I'm generating all of the revenue for the company, and I have this staff that is relying on me to make sure that the sales continue to come in, so that I can make sure their paychecks are met. And I, as you know, like I last year stepped out of, for the first time in my franchise career, the sales role, and building a sales team was probably one of the scariest things, if not the scariest thing that I've had to do as a business owner, because like it takes a sales team a while to like build a pipeline and like grasp the close rate and like understand processes, and like not every salesperson works out, and like and finding that and getting that sales team kind of like humming. So for me, it was like 1 month goes by, another month goes by, they're still building their team, like what's going on, like, and I wanted to like jump back in, like, hey, like, do I need to get in here? And JT, our chief development officer, he's like, Aaron, I got it, like I got it, you just have to trust me, I got it. And I'm like, okay. But I do think, to your point, that is where one of the hardest things for any entrepreneur to do is just like let go of that piece, because whether it's operations that you're good at, or sales, or like whatever function of the business that you like the most, that's probably going to be the bottleneck, that you don't let go of that piece. Okay, so basically what I'm hearing is like working through people, like you've had to learn how to do that. So let's talk about the team that you have now. You hired a COO. You're really big on hiring kind of ex special forces veterans. Maybe you could talk about that, how that's worked for you, and then just most recently, I know it was like maybe 2 months ago, you're like, all right, I'm firing myself as CEO. So talk to me about like your team. What does it look like? What's the size? How did you get to this point where you now have this $45 million asset that could potentially grow to $1 million, like without your day-to-day involvement?
Yep. So the team today, or maybe back up. So I guess we'll start where I came from. So it was August of 22. I mean, prior to that, but maybe early 22. I was the CEO of the business. We had at that point 4 district managers. They all reported to me. And even at that point, like I wasn't the best in that role. Like I can do operations, but at a certain point, I'm like the visionary. I want to keep doing more things. I want to grow the audience on social media. I want to get in kind of more of these partnership deals. And at the end of the day, like I was not giving it my all in terms of from that role. And I was like, all right, I got to replace myself. I got to find somebody who is like all in on operations, and somebody who is ideally better than me at this, right?
Right.
And I am part of a number of masterminds, right, of entrepreneurs who come together and they share ideas and challenges and just all trying to help you grow. And through that group, one of them, who was based in Philadelphia, told me about this foundation that helps place former military special operations veterans into civilian leadership roles, like right out of the military.
Right.
So somebody who's retiring as a Navy SEAL, Green Beret, an Army Ranger, a Marine, special ops, into COO-like positions. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, I'm looking for this role, leader of this team. They sent me one candidate in April of 22.
Yeah.
And it was the only candidate I needed to talk to. And instantly I was like, this guy's perfect. He like researched a bunch of stuff about me, and obviously I have a podcast and LinkedIn and like whatever, knew a lot about me, which isn't hard to do if someone tries.
Yeah.
And so he was, but clearly prepared. And so we hired him full on in August of 22, once he was kind of done his transition out. And by Christmas, so like we're talking 4 months.
Yeah.
And he was fully integrated, and into that role. Like it took him from, and I was his first job, civilian job, since Abercrombie and Finch is
Wow.
my jokes, when he was 16. And then he's been in, ever since he was 18 in the military, and had some, amazing roles as he worked his way up the ranks. He was a chief of staff. He was, led multiple teams, like tons and tons of like leadership roles.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he takes over in August. By December, he's doing great. And he just continues to grow. I moved more into that CEO role. I really let him run operations. I'm more focused on growth and putting together deals. And then this past January, about as of today was a month ago, we fired myself, promoted him, and so he's the CEO. We have a guy as our CFO, Randall, who came from a different foundation, but he was a former Marine Special Operations. He was a helicopter pilot for Obama for 4 years.
Wow.
Under Trump. There's only like 5 of them that fly the helicopters.
Wow.
In Marine Force One, and he was one of those 5 guys, and he was the leader of, I don't know, a bunch of stuff. I don't fully understand it, to be totally honest, of all the ranks, but I know he led large teams. He was very organized. He had an MBA, so we hired him to kind of run our back office here in Pennsylvania, and we've had 5 different guys in this role. We just struggled to find the right person, because before we'd hire people with technical skills, so a CPA, right?
Right.
Somebody who was a controller, somebody who had very good accounting and technical skills. But the problem was none of them were great leaders. And our back office is currently 9, 10 people. Almost all of them are in the Philippines, and we need a leader, right? We need somebody. We have people who can do the work, but we need somebody who can organize, who can set goals, who can bring up issues, who can help solve those issues, who can hold people accountable. And so while he didn't have maybe all the accolades that these other guys had, he had all the qualities of a true leader. And I mean, our office it's the best run that it's ever been. We get like verified financials in 5 days now after month closes.
That's amazing.
And it used to be 25 days.
That's such a big difference.
With the same exact people, right? But it was fixing processes, fixing expectations, finding bottlenecks, like all that stuff. And that's what these guys are amazing at. And then we have, I hired a chief of staff in September, and so
I met him,
similar,
great guy.
same foundation, Green Beret, 28 years. I was his first job, out of retirement, and he's kind of like my right hand person for everything that I do. So he helps obviously with a lot of the content stuff, a lot of the deals that I'm working with. He doesn't have a ton to do with Midas, because Colin, the CEO, really runs it. But as my world continues to expand and I continue to get more and more things, having somebody who can kind of run point on all those, help filter to say, hey, this is bullshit, or hey, this is a really good opportunity, has been a great investment of my of my time and money and what I'm trying to build. So I'm a huge believer in building leadership team. These guys out of these special operations community are the top 1% in the world, and if not higher. And so anyway, I'm finding more of these guys. I'm on their nonprofit. I have multiple guys throughout the country that I'm talking to, who, if I can find the right opportunity for them, like, I'm going to fund it, and I'm going to back them. So
yeah, that's incredible. So you do a bunch of other stuff. Midas is only one piece of it. But before we get into some of that other stuff, so talk to me about your family, Chrissy. When did you meet your wife, and kind of what was her perspective on this? Hey, I'm going to build this $40 million business. And is she as risk averse as you, or is she as risk tolerant? Talk to me about that. Tell the audience about your family.
Yes, I've been together with my wife since high school. I think we met, maybe we were 16, 17, I don't know, something in that range.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so we've been together ever since then. We went to college together. We got married in 2011. We have 2 girls who are 8 and almost 4. And she's always been super supportive of whatever I want to do. She knows that I'm, I kind of have this obsessive personality where if I get into something, I really get into it. And then sometimes other things kind of falter if I zoom in on something for a period of time.
Yeah.
And she's always been super
I can relate to that. Yeah.
Super supportive of all that. She's definitely less risk averse than me. I mean, for her, it's, the stability of the family, like
Right.
the house is paid off, like we have all the essentials, like hers, like as long as we have all that stuff, like she doesn't, it's not as important to say, hey, you should build this really big thing. It's more of like, being safe, secure, first, which of course, I'm in total support of and have
Yeah.
done a number of things to ensure that. And so yeah, and just being home. Like I think one of the biggest concerns that she had, is as the business grew, it's like, all right, what does that mean? Like you don't spend as much time at home and you're distracted more. And like,
Right.
my position had been always like, all right, but if I build the big, this is when like, especially when I was like the 100 calls a day guy, it's
Right,
like, all right, if
right.
you double in size, like you can't do it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, but for me, it was like, all right, I know that the only way I can not take those phone calls anymore is if someone else is taking those phone calls.
Yeah.
And the only way I can afford to hire the quality person who's capable of that is if the business is bigger and I have more, payroll dollar budgets to them, to invest in that person to free up my time. And
Right.
so it has always been a, kind of this, I want to build the business around creating the lifestyle that I want to live
Right.
and needing to invest to grow it to a certain size to hire the quality of people that I need in order to do it. And I think that's a huge challenge a lot of people face is like they want this lifestyle, but then they don't grow it big enough, but then they hire people at a, who just aren't qualified for these roles that they want to give them. And then ultimately it makes it even worse because now you have, people who aren't as experienced doing things and then it wraps you up even more. So that's been a big kind of balance as I've, as we've grown.
And I know like entrepreneurship is something that's important to teach to your girls. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I talk to them all the time about my especially my older daughter about, business and what I'm up to. And, I have to go on trips and she'll talk about, well, why do you have to go on a business trip? And then I'll explain like, what I do or what my goal is and, my desired outcome of why I'm going on this trip. Like I'm going to meet this person. This is what we're trying to do. I'm doing that because I want this. Like, and, she likes the drama. So like, we've had stores broken into, like robbed and, it's all on video and, the night it happens, I've got like the video on my phone and she of course is interested. And then for the next week is asking me about the robber and did any other stores get broken into and how much money did they take and did the cops catch it? Like she's all about the drama. And, and then, we send her to a very entrepreneurial focused school that's like completely different. It's like a very untraditional school. And even through that school, like they have an entrepreneurship fair. Like as a 6-year-old, she needs to come up with her own business plan. Like we could take her shopping to buy what she needs, but we're not supposed to help her in terms of, what it is, the execution of it. And, she made $60 that day and that was like cool. And now she's got money that she could spend. And we try to like show her what that means to spend it and all that stuff. So, yeah, I believe, the more I can teach and prepare them for what it means to own a business and take risk and have other people rely on you and all that stuff, the more she'll be prepared in life.
That's great. So franchising just owning a franchise has obviously changed your life dramatically. I think it's safe to say you wouldn't be where you're at today without franchises. Why, talk to me about kind of you wanting to go deeper into the franchise industry. You're very involved just in a general sense, obviously creating content, investing in other franchise brands, whether it's as a franchisee or even on the franchisor side. Why go even more and why go deeper into the franchise industry? Like what's your kind of meaning behind that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't my goal like to start. I mean, years ago it was, I just want to get online and just share what I'm doing. I'd hired this coach, this business coach because I was like trying to get my life to the next level. And he, one of the first things he told me, he works with these guys who are, a couple billionaires. He's got a couple hundred millionaires. He's got, his world is tons of very successful people. And he said, one of the most common traits that many of them had was having a podcast and was sharing their thoughts with the world. And so he's like, I want you to do it. And he's like, you don't know, like you have no idea what it will open up and that's okay, but just start doing it. And so that was in January of 2021. And so I I start the podcast, business with beers. I still have it today. And, at first I'm I'm not even talking about franchising. I'm just talking about like just business, like interesting people, business models, like what can we learn from them? And then, even at that point, my goal back then wasn't even to grow the franchise business. It was just like something I did, but I didn't realize like there's anything special about it, right? It was just because it was just like my life. Like, it's like, just like normal, I would go as far as to say I was embarrassed by it, because it was like, it's like a business with training reels, and there's all these like negative connotations about not being a real entrepreneur and whatever. We could talk about all that stuff, but like it wasn't something I was like pushing, right? But then I'd start this podcast. I'm super awkward at first. I get better at it, right? How to speak, how to camera presence, how to talk to people. It gave a really an awesome gateway to have conversations. Like, I interviewed Cameron Herold and Mike Michalowicz, who've written like Profit First and a number of other great books. And so it was like an amazing like excuse to start like connecting to some people who otherwise would have no reason to talk to you for 30 or 45 minutes. And then that led to like, hey, let me get on Twitter. Let me just like start sharing my ideas. And my ideas were like, this is what I'm doing, right? This is the business I have. This is how I built it. This is what I'm thinking. And that resonated with a lot of people. And so a lot of people, liked and shared and commented and wanting to learn more about how you go about, rolling up franchises, how we went and acquire, how I think through things, like the benefits of franchising, the downfalls. Like, we've had some huge losses too that I've shared. And so I realized like there's lots and lots of information out there about like franchising 101, right? How to buy a franchise, and like, the 5 things to look out for, and like a lot of it to attract the very newbie person to it. But there was this huge void on how do you actually grow it, right? How do we build a business to be, 45 million a year, 100 million a year? I mean, there's guys with doing over $1 billion in franchising. And there's many of those people, because they're like, they run a bunch of Papa John's, right? Nobody knows. They know that there's Papa John's. They don't know that the company's is, Brian's Pie Company or whatever, because they don't like, for most franchisees, they're not after that attention. They're not after recognition. They're just saying, hey, I just want to like, just show me how to make money and I'm going to go do it. And I'm not going to worry about anything that's like online or promotion or marketing or like any of this education stuff, because they don't need to, right? They
Right.
want to focus purely on operations. Like, it's kind of the benefit of being a franchisee, right? You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And so I felt that there's this just huge void, because many of the people who are super successful do not share any of this stuff, whether it's lack of desire or I don't know, whatever reason, just not wanting to. And so, I get on, I share, I meet and connect with tons of great people who then tell me, man, like, this is awesome. This is exactly the stuff that I need. Like, I write and talk about things as an insider who's actually doing it that they can't find anywhere else, right? And so then I just have more and more people come into my world, really smart people, people with money who want to say, hey, how can we invest with you? People who want to partner with me. And so it became a lot of fun, to be honest, just to like connect with all these people who wanted to be around me and wanted to do the things and had interest in the things that, I've like dedicated almost my life to now. And so, yeah, then it's continued to evolve, where I help all these people get into brands. And then now I have all these brands that want to work with me, because it's like I have this insight of being a successful multi-unit operator. I also have failed at other franchises, and I know like what that feels like. I've helped a bunch of people get in, so I understand like for somebody who's new getting into this thing, like what are the traits that they want to see, right? To get somebody in a brand, to build trust. Like, what are the systems that a new person wants, and then what are the systems that somebody like me, who like the only way I'm going to get into a brand as a franchisee is if I believe that like I could build this thing and make over $1 million a year. Like, if I can't make $1 million a year, like I personally, at the level that I'm at, am not interested in it, right? But that same business could also be totally viable for somebody who's looking to quit corporate America, make 100K, and then 250, and then 500, and then like it could be a slower ramp. And I have a very unique angle now, because I can see it from every angle. And so, yeah, it's led to tons of interesting opportunities and people. And I'm at heart always a deal junkie, and I love like, what's the deal? What's the opportunity? How can I see this fit? Can I find a person? Can I find the opportunity? Is there money, to make this all work and to put this deal together, and just like everybody wins. And so yeah, I don't know. There's a long
That's
answer.
great.
There's a lot there, but anyway, it's
Yeah.
kind of the evolution. So it's not that I set out to do it. It was more of I started sharing ideas because I knew that if I shared ideas, I would attract like-minded people, and then those, you start to just stack and stack and stack, and then opportunities open up into your world, and you start to see a bigger vision of what's possible. Just like seeing the big franchisees back in the day, I see now even bigger vision of what I can do. So.
I like what you said about like I thought it was weird at the beginning because I also like was very against doing any type of content at the beginning, and I think there's, at least from what I've seen with most people I talk to, I think there's like a general misunderstanding that like content is this like self-promotional, egotistical like thing, and especially like a generational gap too in like the Gen X and kind of boomer generations are like, what are you doing out there just like talking about yourself and being on podcasts, and like, don't you have businesses to run and stuff like that? But for me, I mean, it's definitely impacted the opportunities that have been given to me, whether it's other franchisees that we found, or whether it's team members who have wanted to join because of them following me online, or suppliers that we've developed relationships with and connections with, that want to work with us just due to the publicity element of it. And there's really, at least from what I've experienced, few things that I can do that are higher leverage. And doing this type of stuff has allowed me to have more capital to invest into my business, because it's decreased cost to acquire a franchisee. It's increased profits for our business, so that we could build a bigger team to support our franchisees even better. But so you've kind of dedicated a good portion of your time to helping people get into franchises, and like helping educate people about what a franchise is and what a franchise kind of isn't in a lot of ways. And can you talk to me a little bit about like how what does that part of your business look like in terms of how you help people find brands, and how did you decide that's what I want to do?
Yeah, so we have a franchise consulting business that is 100% driven through inbound people, through social media, through Twitter, my newsletter, YouTube, LinkedIn, my podcast. And so, it was kind of born by accident, to be honest. Like, I didn't even know it was like a thing until I was like looking to sell like a course or something to people, like to teach them like what I do, right? Of like, hey, here's how we find a brand, here's how you roll it up, here's how you sell our financing, whatever, all this stuff. And then I learned about this model that says, hey, I can help people find something. They pay us absolutely nothing. We get paid as a referral fee from the franchisors. But, I'm in their corner to say, hey, like let's try to find the best thing for you. And, I have a portfolio of 800 options that you can pick from. And here's a bunch of tools of how to do due diligence, how to reverse engineer the process, how to really look at it from, going from the I, we, they, like trying to understand what your goals are. Like, cause I've done it. I have a lot of friends that have done it. Like I see every step of the process, and, that's pretty rare in this industry. A lot of the people that are in this, other kind of franchise consultants are, some of them have gone straight from corporate America to helping people buy franchises, which is fine. Some of them own, a small, number of businesses. I have a pretty unique perspective at the scale that we've operated in. And so, yeah, I mean, I also like, I made a terrible mistake getting into one that cost me a lot of money. And so like, there's this sense of if I could help other people avoid some of the mistakes that I made, I would love to do that, because I know how that felt, to feel like trapped and like the business isn't working, and I feel like I have no support, and like getting threats of damages and all these different things. And so there was a lot of passion there. I mean, at this point, even that business, I've built a team, and so I generate a lot of the content, or a lot of leads through content. I have a team of people that do a lot of the one-on-one work. I communicate through group calls and through school, and creating lots of free content around that. And so that is a way that I get more leverage on it and I can help more people. And it's a lot of fun too. Like I have now multiple like very good friends who we first met because they reached out wanting to buy a franchise. And I mean, Nick, with you guys, like Nick was one of the first guys I worked with who, you know, he's now part of this mastermind that I run for franchisees. And, you know, he's great. Like there's multiple people now who I've become some of my closest friends that I, you know, really want to help them see them succeed. And so now it's cool that like I helped them get into it and now I can help them really grow it through this other thing I got. So, yeah, I love it, right? And I want to like spend my day doing things that I enjoy more than like, I don't know, what I should be doing. Like part of life for business, right? Is like spend the time doing things that you love, and, you know, and make money. And you know, this does both. So
I think that's for me, that's something that I've realized, particularly in the last 10 to 12 months, is like I want to spend my time doing the things that give me energy, that also drive the business forward. But like if I'm not doing something that I enjoy on a daily basis, and don't get me wrong, like business requires you to often do things that like you don't want to do because the business needs you to do it, and I will always do whatever the business needs. But like a good CEO, a good founder, like is excellent at resource allocation. And my time is like one of the most valuable resources of the business. And like, I have to allocate the resources properly. And doing stuff like this, talking with you, creating content, flying around the country, going to different conferences, being in front of people, visiting franchisees, recording videos, like that type of stuff gives me energy. And so like, then it's my job to find people to do the other stuff and pay them well and incentivize them well to do things that they like to do that give them energy. And that's been really important for me in kind of this phase of scaling my business. Okay, so you've kind of hinted at this a couple times, so I want to double click on it. So the franchise that you bought, that it went terrible. Tell me the experience and what you learned.
yeah, so I mean a couple things. I got it into 2016, 2017, something around then. So it was like kind of still early in my like, you know, I had that other, you know, the Midas stores I had bought, and there was another franchise that was in auto parts, and so you know, we were in auto service, and I thought it'd be easy because I was like, oh, we buy tons of parts, like we deal with this company all the time, like I really understand the business because it felt like it, you know, we're vertically integrated, right, like thing, but you know but then the business itself, you know, when I take a step back, was a parts driven, inventory driven business. So you got to have inventory, which means you have cash tied up on the shelf. It was a commodity in that, you know, the guys at the store really care about the cheapest price because that's how they get the most margin. So while you can talk about quality all you want, at the end of the day, it's like many of them, it's just, you know, it's just give me the cheapest one, and if it fails, like you're going to replace it anyhow because you have a warranty, right? And so it's like they want cheap price, they want fast delivery, and they want like everything in stock all the time. So it's like very cash and resource intensive. You need to do a lot of volume to make any money because the margins were low. And so a low margin, high volume business with lots of overhead, lots of delivery, you know, we needed delivery drivers and all these things. And, you know, I had put somebody in charge to run it who I thought would be do a great job. And he did from like an operational standpoint, but he was still kind of just, he was the manager, right? He wasn't like the leader. He wasn't the owner going out there every single day. And, you know, my failure in part was because I was now diluted, like, cause I was still all in running the Midas business. And then now I'm the main driver of this other business. And, you know, Midas started to make a lot more money, and like my attention then would go there because that's where we're making money. And then this other business just kept continuing to like grow, but lose money. And, you know, sometimes like when something's not going well, like, I don't know, I had the tendency just to kind of like not want to deal with it too. Cause I was like, oh, this thing sucks. Like, I don't want to go there. It was like, it was, you know, an hour drive each way to get to the warehouse. And so like, it just started to spiral, and then I wanted to work on it less and less. I hated going there. We weren't making any money. And then I wanted to get out of it, but then I couldn't find anybody to buy it because it was just, nobody wanted to buy a business that was losing money and take on all this liability. And then the franchisor, I wanted to shut it down. And in the FDD, liquidated damages, like sue for, years of lost royalties. There's no cap on it. And so this was after 5 years. I want to close it down. It was a 20-year agreement. And so it was like 15 years times $60,000 a year. It would have been like a $900,000, potential loss plus more. And, it's just like, would they actually sue me for that? Could we mediate it? Like, I don't know. It was like, a terrible time to be going through to figure out, like, I can't get this thing going. And I just felt like, once I was at that point with them, I felt they didn't really care about helping me anymore, because they're like, all right, well, he's like giving up. But then we feel like we kind of maybe got him because we've got this, this threat of it. And so anyway, I ended up, there were 2 large franchisees near me. I ended up going to one of them and said, hey, listen, I want out of this thing. I'll sell it to you for $1. And so they, acquired, I don't know, maybe it was $200,000 worth of inventory. And, we had a warehouse, and obviously we had sales and stuff for $1. And, obviously we took a big loss on it. But for me, obviously getting out of the franchise agreement that I had a huge liability on was a huge relief. And then it was the mental relief of, like, I don't have this, like, weight on my shoulder anymore. And that was in October of 2019. And so if I held on through 2020, I mean, I definitely would have shut it down, because, like, there was obviously a period of time there where it got really bad. And so anyway, it was, we ended up, the only, like, slight win was we ended up buying the warehouse that we operated in, and we were able to collect rent on that thing for a little while from them. And eventually we sold it to them at a small profit, enough to recoup some of our loss. But, so, like, some of the big lessons were, I think people, like, it's the diversifying too soon is a big problem. I talk about this a lot, where, I think the only time you can diversify is when you have someone else who runs the business. So for me, like, I've diversified into multiple things now, right? But I also have a CEO that runs the business literally completely without my daily involvement. My only involvement is when, we're putting money to expand and open up new locations. Like, that's my involvement. So then I do have the time to then focus on hiring somebody else to then run the next thing, right? But at that point, I didn't have any of that. It was me. So now my time is literally split in half. And now both businesses get half of my time, if not less than that, with, switching costs. And the other one was from a business model standpoint. It was like, I step back and be like, all right, low margins, high volume, high overhead, commodity business. Like, the attributes of the business were, like, not great, right? When I really step back and think about it, versus getting into something that's higher margin, lower overhead, more flexible in terms of, like, variable costs versus fixed costs, and a lot of the other factors I think, make a good business model.
Yeah. It's so important to find the right business that fits. And I talk a lot about that too, about, like, hey, go all in on one thing, drive it until you no longer are necessary, hire the right people, and when the business literally needs nothing of you, then put your eyes towards something else. And people hear this like, oh, every, millionaire has 7 streams of income or whatever. And it's like, yeah. So, like, you have these, it's like, corporate
chicken
America
and egg.
guys.
It's like,
yeah,
that's later they have it, right? I have multiple streams, but, like, back then, like, it was, but I built it all because I focused on one thing.
Right. And that's the key. I mean, you have these guys like come corporate America, like, oh, well, I'll just get 7 streams of income and keep my job full time. And then it's like, it's just then you have, like, 7 different things that don't have any of your attention, that are just, like, probably going to bleed cash. And it's just wild to me.
The other funny part, or not funny, but, like, the guy that I ended up selling it to for $1, he was, like, one of the biggest franchisees. He shows up in a red Ferrari at closing, right? Yeah. He made tons of money in this business. So I failed, same exact business model. It was all he did. And, he was able to buy inventory at the container load, thus 30% cheaper than what I was buying for. So his margins were way better. Like, he had lots of systems down because it was all he did and focused on, and he made a ton of money in it. So, like, there's no magic bullet, right? That's the thing I think a lot of people mistake about franchise. They think, oh, there's one thing, like, you're guaranteed to make money. Everybody makes money. Or this one thing's terrible. Everyone, like, fails. But a lot of times it's does that match? Is the focus there? I mean, if it was all I did, I probably would have been successful, right? But like it wasn't, and I had a bigger and better opportunity on the other stuff that I did. And so it's like it's find the thing and go deep is exactly the best approach.
Well, and also like if you think about like being exceptional at something, like some of the best business models out there, whether it's like In and Out, like they focus on one like small menu of items, like, and they just have done that one
Raising
thing.
Cane's, chicken and
Raising Cane's, yes, perfect example. Like they've done that one thing so well for so long, and it takes so much to be exceptional at something. Like, and to be exceptional at something means that like you are by definition the exception, and so you get, I'll speak for me, like you get so close to like becoming exceptional at something, and then we as entrepreneurs are like driven by this great desire to like create something from scratch and rub two pieces of wood together to create fire, and like, but like where I think you get exceptional is just doing boring stuff that the business requires over and over and over again, and then iterating on little pieces of it until it's like, okay, yeah, this thing is great. And for us, like that's why we focus entirely on residential and commercial power washing. Like we're not going to go out there and like squeegee windows and like get on roofs and like clean out gutters and then like, do paving and like sealing and stuff like that. Like all of a sudden you're like okay at multiple things. And, there's really a lot to be said about just doing something really well, becoming exceptional at it, perfecting it, and then being like, okay, what else after you've done that?
Yep. Yeah. 100%. I feel that even in Midas, I'm like we're trying for years, like we try to be everything to everyone. It's like, we want to be quick oil changes. We want to sell these tires. We want to do full service. And then it's like, versus some of the guys who just do one thing, like they're just do tires. They just do like service. Or they just do oil. Like their businesses are usually bigger, more profitable, and easier to operate than us. And we've done a good job over the last couple of years, like trying to narrow in on that and setting expectations and like focusing on what we're really good at. But that has been one of my biggest like complaints about it. And funny enough, years ago, Midas was built on mufflers, right? All they did was exhaust, and then it was suspension. It was exhaust and suspension, and then it got into brakes, and that was 3 service lines, and then it got into like all these other stuff, and then the business started to get more complicated, and store count dropped. I mean, at one point they had 2,000 locations, and now it's about 1,000 or 1,200. So like,
oh wow, I didn't know that it had that big of a drop.
Yeah.
So you've diversified into other businesses. I want to talk about that a little bit, and then I want to kind of talk about that your big, hairy, audacious goal or whatever. But like, what do you look for now as you expand into other industries? Talk about the other brands you've kind of gotten into, and why you chose those brands, and like maybe just some like advice for people who are thinking about buying a business or buying a franchise or starting one from scratch. Like, what are the things that you kind of look for?
Yeah, so we've expanded in a couple different ways. So we are a franchisee for That One Painter, which is a residential commercial painting business that we own all of the greater Philadelphia area. We got into that for a couple of reasons. One was, one of the challenges with Midas is real estate, where we want to continue to grow. We want to continue to add more stores, but like especially in the Northeast where we live, it's really hard to find real estate that fits the profile at a price that the business can afford to pay. And so, I like the idea of saying, hey, could we get into something that was like sales driven, that had zero real estate or warehouse, something like you guys, like minimal real estate, but we grow through people and trucks and sales crews or whatever that looks like. And so I really like that aspect of it, of a low low overhead, low asset, sales driven business that we felt that we could own like all of Philadelphia and dominate it. And so we got into that. We launched last year. It's okay. It's it's the thing I've like felt is you need really good salespeople. Mm-hmm. Like it is a sales driven business, and so you got to have awesome people. And we went through multiple location managers who just like maybe they knew paint but they couldn't sell, or they just like weren't that good at sales. They didn't want to follow up. They didn't want to go and like do the things that were needed to do. And so, we've now I feel like we've got a really good team. We've made a bunch of changes in who we're hiring, really understanding the profile of the person that we need. And now I can start to see, it's starting to work. I mean, we have a job, $27,000 job painting some pickleball courts that are getting built. The guy needs another probably 10 to 15 for the rest of it. That's getting built. We quoted a job yesterday for a hotel for almost $70,000 at the other guy was higher and he really liked us. And then if we can get that job, they want to do other renovations. So like I can start to see, between those two, I mean, we're talking over $100,000 in those two jobs. And like, I can start to see, the longer we're in this thing and we build the reputation that we're going to get some really big swings. But when you're new, the swings we get are like an $800 bathroom or like a $2,000 living room or like small stuff. But you probably feel this even with the Rolling Suds guys. Like the longer you're around and you build the reputation and you start to really get these opportunities that now you have reputation, now you have team, now you know what you're doing. And, that one job is worth, tons of other small jobs. And whatever, everything it leads to. So, looking forward to that. I am an investor in a brand called Waterloo Turf. So goal is to be the #1 artificial turf franchise in the country. It is unique in that there's only one other franchise that does artificial turf, but they've haven't done anything. So I don't really want to count them, but most of the competition are distributorships. So they're all controlled through manufacturers with one person in a market that controls everything. But, they have supply chain issues. They don't have control over pricing. They don't have control over selection. And so to have a business that can come in and buy from any manufacturer and give people options and have way more flexibility is I think a really appealing model. And it's similar to T1P in that it's sales driven. You don't need a warehouse. There's 1099 crews to install it, and there's a huge opportunity. So I'm an investor in the franchisor level. I'm an advisor on their board, and we're also going to be a franchisee. I'm currently interviewing operating partners. So back to how do I stay focused? Well, I need to find an operating partner who will essentially be the franchisee, who will go through training, who will have equity, who will. For them, maybe they don't have a lot of money, but they have the drive and the skills and the desire to be an entrepreneur. And then we come in and, we can provide the back office support, the admin, we can provide all the stuff that we're really good at. And then they bring the element of, the boots on the ground, the drive and all that. And so, our plan even in that as a franchisee is once we learn the business as an operator, we're going to buy more territories, spider out from wherever we end up launching this thing. To buy more territories and help them grow. So,
I love that business model. By the way, I've been meaning to tell you that. I think you found a really great franchise to invest in. It's very similar in the sense of Rolling Suds. It's very fragmented. It is obviously a need as people become kind of more conscious and they're going to want that.
Water conservation, chemicals. Spots in the country you can't water. There's restrictions on watering and tons of parts of the chemicals, or people just they don't want to, or there's it's all the gas and all the shit that goes into mowing your yard and I don't know. There's a market out there of people who just don't want to worry about it and want a putting green in their backyard or whatever the fun stuff that you can do. So
yeah, you guys will crush it in Florida and California and Nevada and these places
the whole
where
Sun Belt
every summer.
Yep. But then you hear we've heard of these big, installers that are through the distributorship models just crushing it in the Northeast too.
Right, yeah.
Still unknown from our perspective, but from what we hear, I mean, we're talking 10 million plus businesses, operating out of a single warehouse in New Jersey or wherever. So the industry is large and fragmented, and once we start to get into it, I mean, it'll be easier to see where those opportunities lie.
And I want to dive into the operating partner piece because we have a couple franchisees and Rolling Suds, and they have executed this very well. But I think for the listeners, understanding how those deals are structured, I think was really valuable because I think there's this idea that you would just hire someone, pay them $100,000 or $80,000 a year, give them 3% of profits by the end of the year, and they'll work this thing like they've never worked before. So could you talk about whatever you're comfortable sharing, how you plan on structuring that deal? I know you've done this before, I think with the senior care concept as well, with someone who's a franchisee that you've invested in. So talk to me a little bit about how you do that.
Yeah, we've done a couple different ways. The senior care one, it was, he's the franchisee, to be honest. We have like a 20% partnership in that. So that one, we're more of like an investor, an advisor, and participate, on the upside and kind of help coach him. But that, it's like his business, right? We're like barely involved in the operations. We're more just from like a high level board meeting side of it. Now for like Waterloo, for example, I'm going to be my name's on that franchise agreement. So like, obviously I care about it a lot more. And so a couple things. One is the profile of the person that we want to hire. And we want to hire the guy that would be the entrepreneur, right? The guy that like has the skill set and the drive and the will to eat, sleep, and breathe the business. Not somebody who's just like, I'm just gonna be the manager, or I'm just looking for a paycheck, and the guy that's like gonna work 24/7 on growing it like it is his, because it will literally be his. And so, for me, I've got these deep ties to this special operations community, and these guys that I know have that drive, they have the accountability, have the willpower, the skills. It's just finding then the person that wants to be the entrepreneur, right? Because they can have all those things, but if they still want to go work at Boeing as a project manager, like that's not the person that I need. Or maybe they have the skills, but their personality just doesn't they're not that like personable person, right? Maybe they're reserved and quiet, and it's like, I don't know if this guy's gonna like be the one that go out and and sell these jobs, right? And so you have to like analyze it from what are the traits that you're looking for in the person, and then what do they actually want, and like what are they willing to do. And so so that's the community I'm tapping through relationships that I have and people that I know and all that. How we're structuring the deal for the Waterloo one, our goal is, here's the goal, and then we'll see what we end up end up doing. But our goal is we want them to skin in the game, right? And the only way that they're going to have skin in the game is if they feel the financial pain of building the business from zero, to be totally honest. So if we hire somebody and we guarantee them $100,000 a year and they get to build this thing from zero, at the end of the day, if they sit on their butt and do nothing, or they go out and hustle, like they're still making $100K, right? And for a lot of times, we want them to kind of feel that like, all right, I got to go out there and I got to kill this thing just as much as I would feel if I was the franchisee building it from zero, right? And so the model we are going to try is to say, hey, there's no salary to start, right? It's zero. Like we're going to be losing money from day one. You're going to have, your skin in the game. We're going to fund everything. So like, they're not going to be out of pocket. But then they would earn the first somewhere around like $8,000 to $10,000 a month in profit. So as soon as we start making money, maybe the first month they can take 2,000 out. Maybe it's 5,000, 8,000, right? Whatever number we end up agreeing, somewhere between 100 to 120 like run rate for the year. So say you get 100% of the profits for the first, let's call it $10,000 a month. You get 100% of the profits, right? So we don't take a dime out of it. Once they build it to that point, then we're going to do a profit split of, in our case, probably 80-20, 70-30, something in that range, where they would get 20 to 30, and then we would get the 70 to 80. And so it allows them to so if we can build this business to $1 million a year of profit, right? And they have at, let's say 20%, they all have 200K there plus the 120, so they'd be making over 320,000 with not a single dollar invested. We would have a $700-ish thousand return on our money. Like we would be very happy with that. And so that's the way we're structuring it, at least to start. And that profit share would turn into real equity and a real thing in the business, so that one day we got to sell it or whatever, move on. Like they've got they have upside too, not just the bonus paychecks.
I love that. I think that's great. And finding that entrepreneur who doesn't have the capital but it's going to put in everything that they've got into it. I like the way that that's structured, and I think that's a great way to do it. And the way that a couple of our franchisees do it, basically, for those listening, like they basically they fund it. They give the operating partner up to 33% equity once certain benchmarks are hit, once they achieve certain goals, which are probably similar to the ones you're talking about. And then And then that person who would have never had the opportunity to own a business, but is willing to put their blood, sweat, and tears into something, is able to now have this like potentially life-changing opportunity. And I think if someone's going to do it, that's the right way to do it. Now, with the caveat that both of these operators that are finding the operating partners have scaled businesses before, and they've either exited businesses or they have 8-figure businesses, and they know how to do it. And so they know how to lead someone to do it, which I think is crucial to structure that model that way.
Hey, so I do have a hard stop at 11, so 10 minutes.
Yep. I got you. Yep. So that was, I just want to end with a few things. So everyone has, at least from what I've seen, the best entrepreneurs have this like big, you've heard like people say BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. And that kind of goal continues to drive them. You're building this audience, you're building this portfolio of franchises, you're building all of these different businesses, you're building a personal brand. Talk to me about your big, hairy, audacious goal. Like, what is the thing that like keeps you driving this ship forward?
It's a great question. My problem right now is like, I don't have clarity around it. Like because on one side it says, hey, from an operations standpoint, we could build $100 million a year portfolio of brands. Like, I'm not that operator, but I'm happy to fund it, happy to get the people into my world, right? But like, I'm not like every day thinking like, I want to build this, I want to build this massive thing on that side. What I really enjoy is connecting with other people, is being a part of other people's deals, is like this coaching, this element of, helping other people succeed and getting, in doing so, getting a piece of it. And I feel like that has zero, there's like zero restraints into the size of the opportunities that can create. Because I'm always limited by what I can do, right? And the team that I can build versus, if I can create some really strong partnerships by bringing deals and people and vision together, like there's zero limit to what I'm capable of doing. And so, at a high level, it's to be the most well-known and respected person in the franchising industry. What does that actually look like? I don't know, but I think that's like, gaining that respect through, honesty, authenticity, always doing kind of right by the franchisees. Because at the end of the day, if the franchisees don't make money, like nothing else matters. And there's lots of bad brands and lots of people who, I think have, short-term outcomes, and the franchisees are in it for the long haul. And so I think a lot of what I'm trying to do from a education and, what we're even trying to do with like Waterloo, with like reduced royalties and big territories and all these things, is trying to really make franchisee profitability the forefront of the industry, and not, franchisor valuations in these huge paydays that sometimes come at the expense of franchisees, right? And so I think if I could help in any manner in terms of transparency and just, I don't know, changing the culture around it to make franchisee profitability the number one thing, and that brands that don't care about that or focus on that don't survive or even get, to the starting point. So I'm working on getting more clarity around that, but it's on that line.
I love that. I think that's great, and I love what you're doing. Before we part, if someone's considering starting a business from scratch, or buying a franchise, or buying a business, what are some quick pieces of advice that you could leave them with?
Yeah, so if they're looking to buy a franchise, the number one thing I talk to people about is getting clarity around like a checklist of 3 things. Number one is, what are the requirements? Like, what are the things that the thing must have? Number 2 would be like nice to haves, like, hey, this thing would be nice to have recurring revenue, but not like I have to have it. And then deal breaker, like what are the things you do not want at all? And when someone goes to buy a house, they have a dream house in their mind, right? They want this size, this many bedrooms and bathrooms and type of neighborhood and school district, and you have an and you have nice to haves. Like, it'd be nice to have a fenced in this or a pool or like whatever. And then you have like a deal breaker. I do not want to be in this or have this attribute or whatever it is. And so a lot of times people can buy a house sight unseen because they have absolute clarity in their mind of what they want and what they don't want. If it checks all the boxes, they don't even need to see it because they know it's exactly what they wanted and what they've been thinking about for a long time. And I think it's the same thing in buying any business, but especially a franchise, because you have so many options. which is what is that like perfect business model for you based on your goals, your skills, the type of thing that you want to build. And the more clarity someone can get around that, just the easier it will become to find that opportunity, know when you see it, and then you'll be excited to really get up and just kill it every day.
That's great. Awesome, Brad. And thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
All right, cool. Thanks for having me.